What's up, dudes? Welcome back to another episode of Rhomas Men's Team. Pretty simple. We are a group of guys helping each other make progress towards each other's goals. If you're new to the channel, awesome and welcome. If you want to help support the channel and join our pro team, head over to rhomasteam.com/pro, where you can contribute to us on a donation basis. We also give you access to exclusive content, mastermind groups, etc., etc. So anyway, hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll see you on the team.
Life is good, my friends.
Just have a mysterious man walking around in your bedroom. Is that what's going on?
It's Brent Jorgens.
No way.
And dude, if Brent can do an ab check, this guy is such a god. He's 5 months sober. He's got better abs than Wes, and he's dressing like a prep. Like
Careful, let's see it.
It is Brent Summer. Here we go.
His shirt's already unbuttoned. What's going on over there, dudes?
Guys, give him the abs. Give him the abs. Come on.
Oh man, animal.
Dude, other side. Look,
Side's better.
like this V, dude, is insane. Anyway, throw on one of the golf shirts for me, would you? I thought it would be an opportunity to talk summer fashion with the lads. I read this fascinating article about the preppy style and how it originated at Yale University. There was a Jewish immigrant who opened a tailoring, like men's clothing store just across from the Yale campus. And he invented this look in order to distinguish himself from the rest of the people that were selling just formal attire, right?
Interesting.
And the look was like, the iconic preppy style. I think this was in like 1902. So it was like blue blazer, dress shirt, Oxford blue dress shirt is what the article said, khakis and loafers. And this, while we think of this as the iconic American look now, like it was totally anathema at the time. Like loafers were something they wore in the Nordic countries that nobody ever wore in the US. And like it is something like the cowboy outfit and the motorcycle outfit are like the only other two really kind of indigenous American outfits.
This is going to sound silly, but I wonder if athleisure wear, which I would argue, and Larry, push against me if I'm wrong, but in America, and especially out here in California, I would think that that's taken over like a massive footprint in the attire industry.
So here we got the golf shirt, we got the blue golf shirt and the khakis, classic look. We got a brown belt that'll go with the brown shoes.
A lot of loafers going on.
And yes, while Larry, Wes, and Ray are all wearing athleisure wear currently, it is like you need no other indication that the apocalypse is forthcoming other than the fact that everybody is wearing athleisure wear in America. I am like, this is a call to arms. Like I'm summoning like the, all the superheroes of the Marvel universe that are tuning in today that, for 2 or 3 years since the beginning of the pandemic, we have been wearing flip-flops, track pants. We have letting our beards grow long and our hair grow long. And for those who are interested, I'm wondering if you'll join me on the return to formality.
Well, let's talk about
tuxedos, even though I'll be wearing one tomorrow at the ballet gala. But I'm not talking tuxedos. I'm talking just like a return. I want to talk about a return to dressing respectably. If so much of what we talk about is being a good man, being an honorable man, being a leader, let's talk about how you dress.
Oh, this is, I would say secretly and subconsciously I've been dying to talk about this topic because I actually have a lot of thoughts on it. It's actually the way, in my opinion, the way that I first connected with Larry. But Larry, I want to get your thoughts on men's attire, and has the gentleman's attire now either deteriorated or graduated or just somewhat evolved to be more diversified? Larry, what are your thoughts?
I think the pendulum The pendulum swung quite a ways when the whole element of being engaged, Gallup polls, people were turning off to work. And in an attempt to make people comfortable, they had to relax some standards. And one of the standards was clothing. Madison Avenue got into the concept, and the next thing you know, everybody's wearing leisure. But I think it's what it did was it took the distinctiveness out of it. It took some individuality, and it became like anything else. You know, you're unique until everybody's unique, in the sense of all now wearing the same thing. There's no distinction anymore. And I've always been, I always felt that what I wore had to be in alignment with what I was becoming. And if I'm becoming sharp, if I'm becoming cutting edge and distinctive, then what I'm wearing has to personify that. And that was just my attitude. That doesn't mean that doesn't keep you from being what you want to be. But that old concept years and years ago, clothes make the man. I mean, there was a big book about it. And I think we behave differently depending on what we're wearing. Mm-hmm. Right? We're lounging around the house, our mindset is lounge. We're out in front and representing ourselves. We're dressed accordingly. And I think when you don't do that, when you think you can just take from home and go out there and try to be, I think you're not offending anyone, but what you're doing is you're lacking congruence in who you are and how you're presenting yourself. So that's a quick take on it.
Interesting. Ray, what are your thoughts? Because I've got some, I've thought about this topic a ton. As somebody who used to wear custom suits, like I could talk to you about cotton and what region it's sourced in the world and the humidity index of that particular,
and where it is on your Excel spreadsheet.
Oh, right. No, I literally have multiple Excel spreadsheets on every piece of clothing down to Allen Edmonds, wingtip shoes, and then the belt with the matching broguing, all of that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I found myself disappointed at first when the world started to shift. But now I have a slightly different view. But Ray, I want to hear your thoughts first. What's your general take on all of this tidal wave, it seems like, shift into different attire?
Well, like Larry said, and good morning, Larry. It's always great to see you and hear from
Ray.
you.
You as well.
Like Larry said, it is a pendulum, right? So the 50s, a certain look comes to mind. The 60s, right, was more like the preppy 50s, for a lack of a better word, or the kind of conservative 50s, gave way to the counterculture. 60s gave way to whatever the kind of like mustard browns and bell bottoms of the 70s, gave way back to a preppy 80s again, right? Gave way to 90s all in black and 2000s, whatever that was. It's too soon for me to know, which gave way to the pandemic, like casual look, which we're still in right now based on all our appearance today, for example. So I know it's cyclical, and I know that I'm ready to ride the crest of the wave back into something more traditional. And even if I'm the only one who's doing it, I went to New York a couple of weeks ago, and, in places like New York or London or Rome or wherever, you're going to see people that have a lot of money or that are really tuned into fashion and like details and just go all out, right? And that kind of inspired me, or that really created a contrast in my mind between how those people that really stuck out, and they didn't stick out because they were try hard or thirsty or extra or whatever. They just stuck out as looking really fucking good, So that created a contrast for me it wasn't like I was a born again Christian right away, but it was just something that kind of like, it's like a brain worm, or call it, right? Where it was just stuck in my head. And then my European assistant, not my assistant for my European affairs, my one assistant is European. And she also said her and my mom were commenting on their recent trips to Europe, highlighted again the fact that everyone in Toronto seems to be dressed for either a pajama party or a donut shop, or the commute between the two.
Okay, so I want to weigh in here a little bit. There's this phenomenal book called Propaganda, and I'm looking up the title. It's either Albert Bernays or Edward Bernays. It's one of those two authors. Anybody in business should read this book. Absolutely outstanding. It's like one of the seeds of marketing. So Albert or Edward Bernays was the nephew of, I believe, Freud, the psychoanalyst, and he was responsible for bringing psychoanalysis to the marketing world. So this is what changed, from my impression, this is what changed marketing from, hey, buy this toothbrush for 10 cents cheaper, right, to this toothbrush makes you look like Brad Pitt, right? Like, it's feeding into the ego, feeding.
Or Brent Jorgens.
Brent Jorgens, yeah, exactly. And whoever the movie star was at the time when these things were invented. This book is absolutely outstanding because it gets you to question the underlying infrastructure of why things exist. So they talk about fashion in this book. And even back then, I forget when this book was written. It was written, decades ago, talking about, well, the way you influence fashion is typically you find the influencers of that day and you get them to wear those. A book
written by Edward Bernays in 1928.
There you go. Yeah.
And it's still relevant today, huh?
Oh, he talks about smoking and how they made it cool and what they did at the Macy's parade, right? And how they made it cool for women. It's wild. It's so eye-opening.
And I think of and the athleisure discussion, right? Is like athleisure, if and I don't know the historic arc of it, but as I experience it today, it is yoga pants worn by just about everybody, whether you do yoga or not, or you look like you do yoga or not, right? It is when you said they made cigarettes cool in order for it to stimulate mass consumption.
Yep.
Right? That Lululemon, they must have done something that everybody's booty looks good in yoga pants, right? We all drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah. Well, so number one, Chip Wilson, I honestly put him, and I know some sort of fashionistas would hate me for saying this, but I put him in a similar category to a Coco Chanel. Coco Chanel developed, from my understanding, attire that was dramatically different for women than what was the standard at the time. She made it look more like loose men's fitting suits. They were more comfortable for women to go to work in and so on, because I think during that time, wartime, women were put to work essentially because a lot of the guys were, off fighting the war. But as we sort of dissect this, what the book talks about is the way that fashion is created is you pick the top of the hierarchy, right? And then you dress them in certain clothing of certain colors and materials. And then everyone who is below them in the hierarchy wants to then look like them. And then you have this cycle. So then those people at the top of the hierarchy now, I think it was Larry, you were saying earlier, right? Now it's no longer unique. So now the full fashion has now totally diluted through, saturated through the entire hierarchy. And then all of a sudden, usually what happens is the people at the top of that hierarchy will then look at the very bottom people. So you'll have this almost reverted, okay. And I hate saying it like this, but this is, I think, how the book positions it, is they'll look at almost poverty level, right? Or the artist level, the lowest socioeconomic level of what's their trend there. And then they pick out those trends and then they start to do that. A perfect example is if you've ever walked into Nordstrom recently for the last few years and you see the shoes that are dirty, right? They're new, but then they're dirty. I feel like an idiot even describing this, but that's an example.
No, it's something Goose, I think they're called.
Right.
Yeah, or ripped
got the little
jeans is an
star.
obvious example.
Ripped jeans would be a perfect example as well.
Yeah.
Golden Goose shoes is the what you're
Golden
referring
Goose.
to.
Yeah. So for instance, let's dissect the suit. So if you look at the suit was originally, if I had to guess, the suit was originally created to have some sort of distinction between like management, like CXO level, and relative to employees, right? Like suits, not grease stained suits from the assembly line, et cetera, tie, 3-piece, et cetera. Well, now if you look at that, for the longest time, that now goes down to, I hate saying the word down to, but you get the point, right? Like down to waiters and
McDonald's.
waitresses.
Oh,
Exactly,
yeah.
to McDonald's, right? So,
and
I don't know
hedge funders now pride themselves, or like tech entrepreneurs pride themselves in dressing as casual as possible because they get to operate outside of the conventions. That's the
and also,
right. That's
like,
the justification
also, like,
for their
what's the point?
cliche.
Now, I land on the tradition. I love the idea of the specificity of what inch is the collar, what material is the cotton, and so on. However, I got to be honest. Now, my perception is if somebody walks into my office with a full suit, what do you think the first thing I think is? If you guys had to guess.
Serious, professional.
That's interesting.
Like respects your time.
I don't think that. Larry, I'm just curious to take a poll. Yeah, not that I'm right.
Yeah.
I want to take a poll. Larry, if somebody came into your office with a full suit and tie on, what would you think? And like on a Tuesday at 1 p.m., you're not going to a gala, in 30 minutes.
Hey dudes, sorry for the interruption here. Just wanted to let you know, if you want to join our pro team, go to romasteam.com/pro. You can help support the channel. You will also get access to exclusive content, masterminds, one-on-one sessions, etc. All right, back to the episode.
I wonder where they're headed after they're done talking with me.
Interesting. Cool. So what I think is salesperson. Like that's the immediate thing. Because out here in Southern California,
Or a Jehovah's Witness, one or the other.
Yeah. Like something of like they're going to sell me on something, or they're trying to position themselves. They're trying to build a reputation ahead of time, which I can totally respect. But that's honestly the first thing.
Obvious sales strategy in the clothing. Okay.
Exactly. Out here in Southern California, why else would you wear a suit at 85 degrees?
Yeah, I think it's also a lack of confidence. Of course, you probably find that hard coming out of my mouth, but I think it's trying hard. I think the whole thing with clothing now is dressed. This is where I've noticed this in Corona Del Mar. Is dressed like you don't have any money. So right. It's not how much can I stand out, except there's still people trying to get in that attempt to stand out in what they're wearing to be noticed. And I think that's where clothing becomes competitive, and as opposed to being able to socialize and engage, you start, what are you wearing? And I understand that. I remember way back when in the 70s, I was asked to be, we were selling life insurance in a big Connecticut Mutual Life. And I was one of the top salespeople. And I was asked one day to teach the others how to dress. And I was really kind of shocked because guys would take their shirts right out of the dryer and put them on. And, if it's linen, you want linen to look worn. Dare someone iron a linen shirt, because that's contradictory to what you're trying to accomplish.
Brent and I just had this conversation, literally. Continue.
Did you? So, but it's interesting too, how upbringing can come into play. I remember in grade school, I was getting ready to go out and play, and my mom says, "You're not going out looking like that." And I said, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Your jeans aren't ironed."
Nice.
This is going out to play. I learned how to iron. My grandmother taught me how to iron. And so the reason they wanted me to teach these other guys how to dress is because my shirts were pressed. They were tight around the waist because I tucked them into the underwear. And I mean, it was just all this importance of perfection in attire.
Mhm.
And it became pathological because if you had a wrinkle in your shirt, you were uncomfortable. And I went through a period where I would actually take a nice shirt and wrinkle it just so I could start to break away from that. But I think the whole premise was that image was more important than what you had to offer. And I think that's where things start to lose their sense of harmony and balance and coherence, right?
I agree. But I would argue, I would argue that casual has become pathological now, right? If the richest people, if tech entrepreneurs, to signal that they are part of the tribe, wear blue hoodies, right? Just like Mark Zuckerberg. That is casual has become pathological at this point, right? And now, and at art fairs, I can tell you, in the art world where we deal with the richest people, selling stuff to the richest people in the world, it's the same thing. Where the richer the guy is, the more like a bum he dresses, right? And I don't like. I want to push back on you a little bit because, like, I don't think that that's necessarily more evolved, right? I agree with you that a kind of a perfectionism when it comes to wrinkles and all that can be unhealthy. There's an unhealthy version of that. But I'm wondering if there's an unhealthy version of casual going on, especially when you see Gucci and Balenciaga and every other brand selling like literally $800 t-shirts, $800 hoodies, $1,200 sneakers, right? It's at that point, I think of like, this is why the terrorists hate us, you know, like, and stuff like that, where it's, and like, separate point is when I started dating Sarah and married Sarah, I desperately wanted to escape my chaotic life and really merge with her high society life, right? So that's when I started really dressing khakis, blue blazer, dress shirt, golfs, pocket square, loafers, no socks. And I had to evaluate why I was doing that, right? And was it because of it? And part of it was because I desperately wanted to fit in because I wasn't good enough, right? Or I needed a kind of like a costume or like a disguise to fit in to that world because I wasn't good enough as I am, right? Now I've grown up out of that kind of insecurity a little bit, but now I wonder, like, can I dress like a prep? Can I dress like I just got off a yacht? With, you know, like, even though I've evolved out of that insecurity, I think I want to keep dressing like that, or I want to dress like that sometimes. And that's that is that's the proposal I'm making to the men out there today, is that, like, personally, like, I don't think there's ever an occasion where khakis, a white dress shirt, and a blue blazer and loafers, no socks, is a bad idea. You know?
Well, what does it? I'll open this up to the both of you. What does attire, if you had to come up with like a philosophical answer to this, what does it mean to you? Because to the Ben Franklins of the world, if you read like Think and Grow Rich or Laws of Success and so on, you go back to those. And I was part of the Freemasons. That's why I put that Freemason symbol up on the link today. When we had a Freemason meeting, we used to have to go in full suits and tuxes. I don't know if that's changed since COVID, but what does attire mean to you? Larry, I'll throw it over to you first.
Well, when I was listening to Ray, it's interesting. If you've got a dress to fit in, you already don't fit in. So you don't win. Now you're looking around to see if you fit in. And you're you know, and the whole element of our society, of our culture, of our tribe, as we've talked about before, is to be accepted. And then the question you ask yourself is accepted by whose standards? Well, needless to say, the standards of the group you want to be accepted by, not your standards. And this is where individuality gets thrown out in the name of being a part of something. So it's a fine line to be able to dress to fit in, or to fit in and then happen to dress. Because I think that's where the new trend comes from. I think that's where people admire people who aren't trying to be something other than a part of. And so then they go, what are they wearing? Maybe it's got, what's their watch? Oh, I see they have a necklace. And we start to create attachments to that must be what makes you cool. Instead of the person is already feeling good about themselves, and they happen to throw these things on when they went there, and I think that is a higher bar to emerge into, as opposed to, okay, what's everybody wearing now? And excuse me, because then we ask ourselves, what kind of people do we want to have as our friends, as the people we socialize with, people that we can't hold up against, or people that we grow together with. And so this is where, I'm always a little leery of having been it had been so toxic for me of trying to fit in, that now is like, what can I learn by going and being with these people? And then whatever I wear, I'm going to wear because it's comfortable. And, I wore this shirt instead of I was going to wear a blue collared shirt, because you guys are casual. And I wanted to respect that. And then by the same token, I threw a little bit of my individuality away. And, it's this balance. And I think it's a good indicator to use it as a thermometer on what's my real intention in this. So that's my take on that. What about you guys?
Yeah, Ray, what are your thoughts?
I can't remember what my original thought was, because like a lot of things were stimulated by what Larry said. And I think of the definition of cool, right? Is someone who's like comfortable in their own skin, regardless of what the conformity contest around them might be, right? And so I think of Black people in popular culture and how they used to just have this monolithic, like strong, tough definition of male Blackness. But now you have like sci-fi nerds who are Black, right? There's like a huge sci-fi nerd population in the Black population now, which is not considered like even the word nerd in general, right? People are leaning into nerdiness, and it is like a accepted, many times non-bullied form of self-expression, right? And so I think maybe that's where I'm choosing to dress preppy. Because in the art world, like I said earlier, it's this strange dance of like, if you're the rich client, you dress like a bum. And if you work in the art world, it's this weird kind of like, I'm casual. I don't have to dress like I'm on Wall Street. And yet I have to, whatever I do have has to be absolutely fine fabrics, And so like, it's this weird hypocrisy, or just weird, like tribal signaling that's unique to the art world, just like jocks have a tribal signaling in how they dress, right? And so I think that so that's what I thought of. I thought of how wonderful the world is currently, where there's all kinds of self-expression. I remember there was some kind of like court case in the 90s where one of the jurors showed up in a Star Trek uniform. I don't remember if it was the OJ trial or what it was. And she was ridiculed mercilessly back then. But I wonder if that would have been the same today, because it would appear to me, and I may be very incorrect, but it would appear to me as if there might be a broader kind of menu of expressions that are kind of permitted by the fashion police, for lack of a better word. So dress yourself, dress like, and I don't mean dress yourself as in be the one who puts on the clothes. I mean, dress is one word, your is the other word, and self is the third word, right? Like in terms of, I think if you have a healthy sense of self, right, where you like, I think that can dictate how you dress, right? And that's whether that is as minimal as possible, as maximal as possible, as casual as possible. Like dress the self, like dress the amazing self that you are, basically.
Yeah, I think so. First, I think it depends on what level of resolution we want to go to with this conversation, because I really do believe that if a caveman were to hop on here on Crowdcast right now and he'd say, "What are you guys talking about?" Right? Like wearing a loincloth, maybe
to
not
block the wind. Like right, just exactly. Block the wind from my junk, right?
Yeah, you're talking about the most comfortable thing. The most comfortable thing is probably just your skin. You know, God gave you this comfortable thing called skin, right? Like, so I don't think we're gonna, in my personal opinion, is I don't think humans are going to be able to divorce themselves from the underlying like hierarchical game, like tribalism, like you're saying. And I think it's very important. I do think it's warranted to have a story of like, hey, this guy dressed like Spock and he's showing up to the O.J. Simpson trial. I'm not so sure he's congruent, like he's mentally aligned with society. He's not a proper sample of the population, you know, because the signal there is if he's doing that, he's probably substantially far away from other like key dimensions of society. There's a good chance. Yeah. Fortunately, you have to go off a limited data set. So it's like if I show up to any business meetings in a
Star Trek outfit.
Right, or a Star Trek app. The reality is, right, the human on the other side is going to be like, I don't know. Now I'm not
giving this guy a dime.
Yeah, right. I could argue that's like, what's the difference? It's just cloth. Like, yeah, I could break it down to its like atomic level and say like, really, what is this? But there's a whole bunch of sub narrative going under it. My personal view of attire, the number one prerequisite for me is, I don't care what somebody wears, but if that person was my brother, I would say, are you doing it with intention? Or did you just roll out of bed that way? That was the easiest, like low-hanging fruit. That to me is the cutoff line. If you're showing up,
and you brought that up before. You've brought up that before. What like that intention is the kind of determining factor when you're leaving the house, when you're going on a date, whatever.
Exactly, and I know when some people hear this, they're going to want to defend that. Like, oh, what's the difference? Like, no, the difference is like, my personal view is to have the gift wrapping match the quality of the gift inside of it. So as long as that is congruent, then I'm all game. So I don't care if it's Lululemon or if it's a 3-piece suit, et cetera. Now, there is part of the pragmatic sort of Venn diagram there that is pragmatism. Dude, when the most expensive suits, I mean, you guys know this, you can't raise your arm above like shoulder height without like messing up all of the geometry. Like I literally, before I used to go to work in New York and Philadelphia and Boston, sometimes I could not reach my teacup in the cupboard right in the morning. Like I'd have to get on a chair and like try to, do one of these things. That to me,
the janitor would have to get it for you.
Yeah, that seems pretty crazy, right? Like to have.
That reminds me of a suit I had that was so big you could raise your arms and your suit arms didn't raise.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. So I think there's an element now of like pragmatism. Why have a $3,000 suit when you can't move in it? And I'd also say now that we have the Andrew Hubermans of the world and all of these people teaching us like what real fitness is and mental fitness and emotional fitness and physical fitness. If you're not integrating fitness throughout your day, right? Like you're massively behind the eight ball. So I want to be able to drop down and do 20 push-ups, or I want to be able to do a downward dog like 10 times throughout the day. And a suit will not allow me to do that. So there's an element of pragmatism. And now, like, I also think if you look at the athleisure wear market, and Larry and Red, like, if you are okay with it, please send me your waist size and your inseam via text. And I want to send you these pants. Now the athleisure wear market has clean lines.
You pervert.
Yeah,
you pervert.
So I want to say
you're gonna make a waist down. You're gonna make a waist down mannequin of me and Larry. I know what's going on.
Yeah. So there's these pants from Rhone, this company called Rhone, and they are the resort pants. They look like dress slacks. Now they don't look like pleated, crease in the middle, like high quality suit slacks, but they look like work slacks. Those pants, like you could go work out in them. So I think now they still have all the clean lines, they have the intentionality, and they have the pragmatism. So that's where I would say is like, what is for both of you, what is your Venn diagram of attire?
Well, if you don't mind me going first.
Oh yeah, please.
Larry,
No.
I also have a dilemma because Theory is a brand of kind of like minimal, borderline formal, borderline sportswear kind of clothing. Now it's not a tracksuit, but the Theory brand is something I wore nice Theory casual pants, nice Theory t-shirt and shorts to the Park Plaza for tea with my daughter and my wife. The problem is the kind of schlubby guy next to me at the table with his daughter and wife, like it was all kind of low end clothes, but I couldn't tell the difference between our two outfits, So I accept your invitation for free pants. I will take them, but that's the kind of thing I'm trying to graduate out of. But Sarah bought me a pair of kind of like exactly what you're talking about that are like, it looks like a super comfortable suit pants. And I'm very tempted to buy the companion blazer just because that might be the right kind of inching toward formality, that I need to do. If I can just make a point that, Ryan, who works in, who uses heavy equipment in his design job, he said there was a Japanese company that made suits for blue collar workers because everyone wears suits. It was flexible and water resistant. And maybe Troy can pick up a suit. Troy is one of our OGs here who is pursuing his dreams and living in Japan currently. And message to Ryan that the original Ivy League store that I talked about in New Haven, Connecticut, was purchased by a Japanese conglomerate in the 80s, because for the same kind of reason you're talking about. So go ahead, Larry. I'm sorry to have taken the conversation in so many different directions, but Wes, maybe you want to ask the question again, or Larry, what's up?
This is very interesting because, we all dress, and for a variety of reasons. And one thing that my wife has been a good balance for me is, what are you going to wear tonight? I'm just going to throw some jeans on. And she goes, I don't think jeans is going to be appropriate tonight. And so there's a bar of respectability, and it's not it's not for you to so much respect yourself as to respect the group that you're going to be involved with.
Agreed.
And right. And so that'll kind of tailor it a little bit. By the same token, I always want to be the guy that's just a touch unique from the others. And I think that's probably my basic narcissism, but otherwise I've never been a blender inner. Because it's kind of boring and vanilla to me. And I think most of us really have that inside of us, that we want to be an individual and we want our distinctiveness, but we're also social creatures. So dress for what's comfortable for you and how you want to present yourself, but also recognize that you were invited somewhere. Or, it's different when you just are going to show up, and go to a movie or go out to dinner. I think you have your individuality is imperative, but if that's important to you. So I think that respect side is important.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Larry. Maybe adding to the Venn diagram, like my own personal belief on this. like something that, number one, doesn't get in the way of the communication, right? So like on the lower side or the upper side. So for instance, if you show up, in a tracksuit to a gala, right, that's going to get in the way of the relating to the people in a disrespectful way. Similarly, if you go to, me, you and Ray go to a gym session and you show up in some sort of like tuxedo.
With a carnival, feathery kind of, giant.
Yeah. Now, where I do, and I love the artistic piece of it, because this gets back to what Jordan Peterson says, and even what Ray really has taught me. Well, like, there is a pleasure and a respect of bringing art into your life that I was not completely oblivious to, but didn't really appreciate. So I think there's an element there of like, hey, make your bed in the morning, because it shows that you have intentionality towards like, I want to put in the work. I want to do. And so why is it any different for your human self, right? I want to make sure that even though I might wear a sweatshirt to the gym, is that sweatshirt, is it wrinkled, right? These finer little details, I think are really important.
Yeah, and I think, Larry, I don't call it narcissism. Like, you are the superior man, and like, you're not allowed to say that, but I am allowed to say that about you. That like, you are a much higher expression of manhood than most of the guys out there. Would you not agree, Wes?
Totally agree. Completely agree.
And so like, I think, and so you like, I don't want you to, and again, I don't want you to dumb it down so that like, you can blend in with the herd, right?
Yeah.
Like, I want that self-expression from you, and I want that from me. And part of the problem of when I was trying to conform with Sarah's high society, right, is that I was dumbing it down. Even though I was dressing more formally, I was muting myself in order to be accepted into that tribe, right? And like, to be one of the soldiers all in a row, not sticking out, right? Like, just to be absolutely indistinguishable from the herd. And that's not how I live today, even if I might be wearing the same outfit occasionally that I am when I was trying to blend, right? And trying to be absorbed into the herd. That's not the case today. And that's why I'm calling for a preppy summer. Yeah. Okay, boys? You heard the argument from the West Coast. That's fine. They're good at rap music and palm trees. For the rest of us, I'm calling for a preppy summer. And I will be posting pictures to the Discord of Brent in the outfits that with the fashion show we did today. And I would defy you all not to break out into an erotic sweat.
Well, let me put a couple more variables on the table here. Number one, if anybody wants to walk away with some sort of practical insight from this conversation, a couple ways that I think about it is fit, right? Like, I think that's a very important. Like,
absolutely.
Now there's ways of saying, okay, we're going to go loose fit, right? Like, oversized sweatshirts, et cetera. Like, and that's for a certain venue. But I would say pay attention to that, right? Like, look at the silhouette of your body, look at the silhouette of the clothing, and there has to be a certain relationship there, in my personal opinion. That I will say also, though, that there's an element of, okay, I'm going to have to pay more for Lululemon, because honestly, if I go to a Walmart, just to sound like, it doesn't have some of the practical engineering elements, right? Like, the pockets are too shallow, so my phone shows when I'm walking. Do you know, these little pieces that for me is not congruent with my like specific type of like mentality. But then I think can be a large chasm between what is aesthetically appropriate, what is practically engineered. And then there's like, if we go to the Gucci's and the Louis Vuittons and so on, in my personal opinion, there's just this premium on top of it that is purely a hierarchy play, which for me, then I'm out, right? Like, especially if you add discomfort and hierarchy on top of it, it's like, I'm not paying $800 for a t-shirt because there's no practical element to it. Yep.
You mean stunting? Like stunting and flexing, right?
Exactly.
Like you're paying that premium to stunt and flex.
Exactly. It is so obvious that it is like, I'm just paying $800 for this t-shirt. even though I paid for it on a credit card, or I paid for it from mommy and daddy's credit card, whatever that is, like whatever that is, that to me seems highly impractical. And most of the times it looks foolish, and it's purely a play, per my perception, purely a play on like, I'm better than the tribe just because of like this monetary aspect. So for me, that's where I'm out. I'm happy to pay for a Lululemon that's $127 or whatever for a pair of pants. I'm not willing to pay $800 for a pair of pants if it serves me no extra benefit other than I just get to say or show off to the group that I can pay for an $800 pair of pants. Larry, what are your thoughts on that? Larry said Corona Del Mar, by the way. Corona Del Mar is like top of the food chain when it comes to this stuff.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of reasons to gag when you wander around and watch how some people present themselves. But first off, I want to thank both of you for that great compliment you gave me. I'm not dumbing things down. I think that's something that we all need to take a look at in our lives and stop diminishing our own individuality and be willing to share what's on our mind without self-degradation. And so that was a very nice wake-up call from each one of you, and I appreciate that. Thank you. And I think the other element, and then I've shared enough, is the why are you wearing it? Whatever it may be, whether it's an attitude, it's your personality, your facial expressions, what's driving all of that? And I think that is where real fashion comes from. I think when the fashion becomes a statement, not the person that's wearing it, we have a huge contradiction. It's like the $800 t-shirt as opposed to, one that just happens to be comfortable and it also looks good. It's the reasoning behind it. And I really believe that our whole quest in life is integration, to be really truly able to manifest this whole creative spirit that we have, this artistic flair, to be finding out and letting our flower bloom so that we can truly let others see the real inward beauty that we offer. And to me, that's what attraction is. And that's why I enjoy you guys, because you're unique, you're flavorful, you're tasty in the sense of your individuality, and Wes, you're just your obsession and curiosity with finding out to the nth degree behind something, to where it becomes fascinating, and you bring it to a simplistic fashion so that we all understand. And Ray, you are just this creature who continues to unfold and discover and begin to recognize how much value you bring to any element that you find yourself in. And to be able to experience that in the little time I've spent with you guys, and it's really good for me. And Diane goes, you didn't do a podcast, what are you doing with your time in there? And I go, I'm growing. That's what I'm doing with my time in there. And she goes, okay, well, we'll put it on the calendar,
Larry,
so you don't miss it.
Larry, I never knew that, like, describing me as basically a delicious cup of Colombian coffee, rich, bold, complex.
Yeah.
Cinnamon high notes. Yeah. Like, I never knew that would be the highest compliment you can pay me. And
he describes my autism like it's just this beautiful thing, which is great. I appreciate it, man.
Right. Like, and in the comments, like Larry's writing, nobody tell Wes there's a piece of dust on his shoulder or else he'll have a panic attack. Right. We can all see it. But my wife also wonders why I spend this time with my men. And like, just to add to what you said, God moves in mysterious ways. Right? And I want you guys to go have an amazing week. I want you to dress your space self. Like like you are God's finest masterpiece, and you're good enough the way you are, and so dress exactly how you want to. Me, I'm gonna dress like I just got off a yacht. You guys have a great week. I'll see you on Friday.
All right, dudes. Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Thanks,
Later.
guys.